Hi, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to take this opportunity to share another video about my experience in applying here in the United States as a teacher. So I will just share with you some interview questions that I had when I was still applying there in the Philippines. So maybe this video will just be very quick. So I just saw this saved questions on my notes in my phone. So even though I was about to sleep and I was browsing in my tablet, I saw this set of questions that I had on one of my interviews before. So I just wanted to share this with you so that you're gonna have some guidelines on what are the questions that could possibly be asked on you by the principals here. So I'm not saying that all the interviewers are like this or all the questions in different school districts are like this. So it's just that most of the questions of the principals are similar to this set of questions, and I'm gonna find some time to look for the other videos of my interviews, because that's what I did when I had some interviews before there in the Philippines. Every time I will have an interview, I am recording myself so that I could go back to those videos and I could replay them, and I could review the questions that had been asked on me. So without further ado, let's get started and let's get into this set of questions that I saved on my notes. So let's start. The first one, or the first question, is why are you interested to work with us and teach to underserved community? I also put some notes in each questions here, so that whenever I go back and review this set of questions, I would have an idea on how to share this to you. Because I really thought of doing some videos in order for me to share my experience in applying here in the United States. So on this first question, I know some of you will ask, what is an underserved community? Because when I first heard this term, I was also shocked and got nervous at the first time. So on this question, from the word underserved community, so I thought of the school that I was applying that time. So since the school was a public school, so I quickly just relate my answer to the kind of community that I will be teaching. So from the word underserved, I just thought that maybe these are the low-income families or the middle-class families. So those common children that are studying in a public school, just like there in the Philippines. But that here in the United States, not all the children that are studying in a public school are really came from the low-income families or the middle-class families. I just thought it that time because I really don't know what is the meaning of underserved community. So that was the first time that I've heard that term. So my tip for you here is that it is really important that when you are applying to a school district, you really need to search for that school that contacted you, that emailed you for an interview, and search for what kind of community it has. The number 2 questions that I have here is, can you tell me a manageable academic achievement goal that you set for the grade level you're teaching? So here in the United States, since their curriculum is K to 12, just like what we have there right now in the Philippines, so they are really looking for some teachers that knows how to plan their lessons, and if their lessons or their type of teaching is really attainable and really suits for the kind of students that they have, or for especially for the grade levels that they will be handling. So you just share your experience that you had before, and Also, keep in mind the position that you were applying for, so that you will just generate your answers and the lessons that you will be sharing to the principal from that grade level or the position that you are applying for. All right. So the third questions that I have here is that what are ways that you track the progress of these goals? So here in the United States, they are really particular of the data that you are gathering to measure the learning attainments of your students. So you have to think of some assessment tools and some kind of gathering datas that you are using there in the Philippines that you could share here in the United States. And also, it will be helpful if you will search on some assessment tools or on how they are tracking their records here in the United States, so that your answers can be related on how they are doing their progress monitoring reports here in the USA. So that's the third question. The fourth question is that when you're implementing a lesson, what teaching move do you incorporate to ensure that your students are learning? Now, in this type of questions, they are now looking on what kind of teaching strategies you are using as a teacher. So here in the United States, they really love the differentiated instruction and the explicit teaching method. So those are the two things that I am currently using as a teacher of special education here in my school. Search of some teaching strategies about differentiated instructions and explicit teaching methods. Because here in the United States, they are really valuing the uniqueness of each child that you have inside your classroom. They are also aware of the multiple intelligences that you will encounter, and also they really wanted to make sure that you are prepared and you are efficient to every kind of student that you will have in your class. So the next question that I have here, the fifth one, is can you tell me what are the behavior expectations that you have for your students? So here they are just looking if you were a dynamic teacher, or you could also relate your answers about being a culturally diverse teacher. All right. Number six question is, have you heard of responsive classroom approach? For this one, that was the first time that I've heard this kind of approach. So I was kind of hang a little bit, but I just thought that since they're asking for a classroom approach, so I just relate my answer on how I manage my class there in the Philippines and abroad. Just think of some classroom management styles or techniques that they are using here in the United States. So whenever you will not know the kind of classroom approach that they were asking, you could kind of relate your answer on what kind of classroom management techniques that they are using here, because even though they have different terms that the principals or the interviewers would ask you, you could make sure that the idea, the style, the management techniques that they are using here are kind of similar to each other. So even though they're calling it differently, they're kind of similar. So it is really important that you search for some management, classroom management techniques that they are using here in the United States, because most of the interviewers are really looking forward to teach on how the teachers will handle their classroom, or on how they are doing their classroom management styles. All right. So the seventh question is that can you tell me about a time that you had a student who had been disengaged in your class? How did you handle this kind of situation? So now, on this question, they are looking on how you are doing your behavioral management inside your class. So just Google it and search some techniques on how they are handling behavioral issues here in the USA. Okay. So, and the last question is that this is just a follow-up question from the previous one. So after you do that, have you seen a shift on his behavior? How has his engagement been in the classroom? So they are just looking if that kind of behavioral management technique that you've used to that kind of student was effective. All right. So I think that's all for tonight. Those are just some of the questions that I had when I was having my interviews there in the Philippines. I hope these questions help you a lot to prepare for your upcoming interviews. And I will also search, oh, no, not search. I will also go back to some of my interview videos that I had before so I could share other questions that I encountered. You could also watch those. Okay? So thank you and good night, everyone. Bye bye.